Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's session, How eBay Turned Inclusive Benefits into a Retention Strategy. I'm Grace Stokes, Head of Client Success here at Peppy, and I'm thrilled to be here as your host today. Every day here at Peppy, I work with organisations like eBay, NatWest Group, Aviva, Capgemini, just to name a few, and I help them design and deliver inclusive health benefits that don't just look good on paper, they actually work for their people. So today, we're going to hear what that looks like in practice through the lens of a business that's doing it exceptionally well, eBay. But before we get into it, I just need to cover a few bits of housekeeping. So today's session is being recorded and we will send the link out after the event. So no need to take notes, but look out for us in your inbox. We'll be running a live poll in just a moment, so please do take part. It really helps us tailor the session to you to make sure you are getting the most out of it. You'll also notice a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Please do pop any questions or thoughts that you have in there throughout the conversation. We will have time at the end to answer as many as we can. And obviously, like I said, we want to make sure you get the most out of this session today. And finally, if you're having any technical difficulties, because we all know what these Zoom webinars can be like sometimes, please email marketing@peppy.health, which is just on the right-hand side there. So now that's all covered and out of the way, let's get into today's session. So we know that many employers are trying to do the right thing when it comes to employee well-being. But often we hear it all the time, benefits go underused, or sometimes they're hard to explain, and it's really difficult to get that visibility internally. Or sometimes you get asked again and again why menopause support is a business priority. Does that sound familiar? If so, then you're in the right place today. Today's session is all about what happens when inclusive healthcare becomes part of the business, not just a side project. And we'll hear the real practical human story behind it and why it's both a people's priority, but also a business one. So let's meet our wonderful speakers today. First up, I'm joined by Lorian, who is Benefits Manager at eBay. Lorian has been with eBay for nearly 14 years and now leads insured benefits across 12 EMEA countries. She's been instrumental in shaping how eBay supports its people, balancing consistency, compliance, and compassion across borders. Her insights today are going to be invaluable, especially as someone who's experienced these services firsthand. Hello, Lorian.
Hi, Grace.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good, good. Thank you very much for joining us. We're super excited to be hearing from you today. I'm also delighted to welcome Laura Carter-Penman, who is the Director of Clinical Services here at Peppy. Laura is a powerhouse in clinical leadership with nearly 3 decades of experience. She's led services in both the NHS and private healthcare, and she chairs a national network supporting infertility nurses. And at Peppy, she ensures our services from menopause to fertility to pregnancy and parenthood are clear sound, of course, but also deeply supportive and accessible to all. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Grace.
How are you doing?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Really pleased to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. What a lovely panel I have today, and I can't wait to get chatting to you both a little bit more. But before we do that, I want to hear from you, our audience first. So as I mentioned, we're going to kick things off with a poll, which should be on your screen now. So what we want to know is what your biggest challenge is when it comes to delivering inclusive employee benefits. A, our benefits aren't well understood or used. B, we struggle to get internal buy-in or leadership or support. We want to improve inclusivity, but we don't know where to start. We don't have strong data to show the impact of our benefits. E, it's hard to support people consistently across geographies. Or F, all of the above, which is quite a lot. So I'll just give you a couple of seconds to answer that. I'm sure we're getting a few results or responses in now. Okay, results are in. unsurprisingly, the highest one to come out on top is all of the above. So yeah, I can imagine it's not just one or two challenges, but actually all of these challenges are heard by you. The second one, or joint first, actually, is we don't have strong data to show the impact of our benefits. Now, I completely sympathize with that, speaking to clients every day, trying to show the ROI to the business of the benefits that you're providing is notoriously difficult. And Laurie, I know kind of later in this session we'll kind of uncover how you've done that internally, and hopefully to our audience on the call you can go away with some tips and tricks as to how you may be able to show that data. So thank you for your responses. Again, in this session, we hope to cover some of those challenges and help you overcome them within your business. So let's get into our discussion today. So Lorian, I'm going to come to you first. So just to really kind of set the scene and for us to think about why we're here today and to talk about that inclusive healthcare. In today's talent market, we know that retention is everything. But what made you realise that inclusive healthcare wasn't just a moral imperative, but a strategic one for retaining your people?
Well, I think to start with, looking at menopause, 8 out of 10 women go through menopause whilst they're working. So it's going to affect so many people. And if you think of the age in which women are going through the menopause, they're likely to be in quite senior positions. So, when you look at the statistics, almost a quarter of women are considering leaving their jobs when they're going through this. So we're going to lose potentially all of that knowledge and expertise. So, we have to do something to retain that talent. And the more I was going through it myself as well, I'm thinking, and I don't think my symptoms were as severe as some other people. It's really not surprising. So I just thought we really need to do something to help our women for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of moving on from that, the health challenges that you've mentioned there in menopause, but other health challenges like
Yeah.
fertility or loss or becoming a parent can also push people out of the workplace, can't they? So if we're thinking about retention, it, we know that employers do risk that when they don't offer support. Aside from retention and kind of losing good talent, is there any other impacts that employers might see when they don't offer that support?
Well, I think, lots of people having additional sick days for a start, and that's going to end up costing the company a lot of money. So I think, and as you said, it's not just menopause, it's things, people who suffer with endometriosis, people who suffer with severe period pains. And I think now it's changing, thankfully, but people weren't talking about it. And, if you would say to somebody, oh, I can't come in, I've got awful period pains, they just feel like, don't be so ridiculous. They don't understand quite the impact. And some women absolutely do need to take time off with period pains. I suffered with really bad period pains when I was younger, and I remember, fainting when I was at school, and it was just horrendous. And I think people don't understand quite the impact of this. And obviously, when you've got endometriosis, from what I understand, I've not suffered with it myself, but so painful, really, really painful. And so, yeah, the impact on leave days as well, sick days, huge.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that, and I'm sure my colleagues won't mind me saying this, but I was having a conversation with two colleagues yesterday about their experience with endometriosis and just how it's the impact that it has on you coming to work monthly, and how you feel, and
Mm.
you're so in so much pain that it makes you sick. And actually, if we think about that, and like you say, the sick days, what we just mentioned of having the data to support why these benefits are important, something like tracking the reason why people are off sick and having menstrual health as an option of people choosing that does help you paint a picture of the impact that women's health issues may have on your business. So thank you for that. And again, Lauren, from your experience, where do traditional benefits fall short in supporting that long-term retention, especially for these underrepresented groups or these health challenges that aren't usually kind of focused on?
Well, I think it's improving now, but only very recently. And I mean in the last sort of 3, 4 years, because previously, health insurance companies wouldn't even provide any help with menopausal support. You know, your GP, I remember having a horrific conversation with my GP, and she was literally like, well, you know, I'm not really old enough. I haven't gone through it myself. So let me just get onto Google. You know, just awful. But the health insurance companies, they saw it as a natural part of the aging process, and therefore they didn't cover it, and they didn't see HRT as a medical necessity. And I'm sorry, but it absolutely is. When you're losing your mind, or you know, feeling incredibly tired, or whatever effects it is that the menopause is giving you, symptoms that you're experiencing, you need to have that. And honestly, when I went on the HRT, it was just amazing. It just completely changed me within a week. I was like, oh my God, I'm back to being me. And it was just so lovely to feel like myself again. And I've had so many women say that with various events that I've gone to and books that I've read, etc. And yeah, I think it's so important. So for them to say it's not a medical necessity, I just think is quite offensive. So that's one
Yeah.
thing. But also, you know, obviously, as we've said, it's not just the menopause. I think we need to be very mindful of other issues that women go through, like miscarriage, for example. At eBay, we do try to support our employees that go through that. So the first and second trimester, if they miscarry, then they have the bereavement leave of 10 days. If it's the third trimester, then they can take the full parental leave of 20 weeks. So it's just trying to support our employees when they're going through things like that. So and things like, you know, that was the miscarriage leave is a relatively new thing. So I think those, so we're trying to sort of plug the gaps, I think, and the more people talk about it, the more improvements will be made.
Absolutely. And I think, like you say, it is, we are seeing the changes happen, but traditionally lots of these things weren't considered by the traditional benefits. So
No.
obviously with that shift and how we're seeing it change, we do have to change perception internally as well. So sometimes that can be really hard to sell. So what part of your business case do you think resonated most with leadership when you were trying to get kind of these inclusive healthcare benefits brought in, or like you say, that leave changed as well?
Um, well, I've got to say, you know, it wasn't it wasn't a particularly hard sell at eBay. They're so supportive of their employees. So, you know, our mission, our benefits mission is to enhance people's lives and enable them to thrive. Um, so I think once I sort of brought this up and explained and gave them the statistics that I talked about previously, they were very mindful of that. And we've got a lot of women in leadership positions, and you know, we don't want to lose them. We want to support them, and we want their managers to know what's going on as well. And I think we did a survey back in 2021, and I'd already realised that there was this conversation was getting louder, and realising that we were behind the curve and we really didn't want to be. You know, you look at companies like HSBC who implemented a menopause strategy back in 2019. I say back, you know, it's only 6 years ago. It's crazy that they were like one of the first sort of pioneers to do this. But and then you know, closely followed by people like Vodafone and Marks and Spencer's Channel 4, etc. So yeah, it wasn't a particularly hard sell. And yeah, I mean, getting the support from people like our HR business partners who were saying, you know, come on, we really need to get in the game here. And then with the Davina documentary coming out in 2021, it made it less taboo, and women were able to find their voice a lot easier, I think, after that. And you know, I do think that suddenly after that documentary, everybody was talking about it. You know, I remember talking to my sister-in-law and all of my friends. You know, so many people and men as well were talking about it. It's like, oh, thankfully, you know, thank goodness. And I'm lucky. My partner is very supportive and he listens. And he's really sympathetic. So I am lucky. But you know, when you're going a bit mad and you've got horrendous PMT, I mean, how he didn't kill me, I don't know. But you know, thankfully he did not. But yeah, I think it was just a lot easier to talk about it after
Yeah.
those things. So it wasn't a hard sell at all.
Which is so great to hear, and obviously I work with lots of clients every day where they have dissimilar stories, unfortunately, and it is a challenge
Mm,
to get that senior leadership buy-in. And I think if we just literally just cover what I just mentioned, is what data can you have to support it, and understanding the impact that it has on retention, like those stats that you mentioned at the beginning, Lorian,
Mm,
that really helps paint a picture if you do have some of
yeah.
those pushbacks, because I think unfortunately we definitely know that we're on the right side of this menopause conversation. And like you say, Lorian, you said to your leaders, we have to do something, everyone's doing
Yeah.
something. But some companies are still behind. But I think, like you say, open up that conversation, be as open as possible. And I actually love that you said about your mission, your benefits mission, because you're on in this job for a reason. And if you can say bringing on these benefits or covering these topics helps us on our mission, then that's a business goal, which is a really good way to get buy-in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was, any advice I would give is there's so much information out there from really valid places like the CIPD or, there's so many institutions that are now producing data on it. And I think the more information you can get from those respected organizations, the more likely it is that you will get that buy, and not just, oh, I watched the Davina documentary and I think we should do it. I think there is so much information out there, and that's what I did. I just sort of went out and I looked at so much, and I just tried to get all of it together and just go, look, it's not just one organization saying, it's multiple organizations that have this data, and we can't afford to lose these amazing women in our workplace. We don't, why would we want to lose all of that expertise and that knowledge? So yeah, I think that would be my advice, is just try to get lots of different data points.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And you've mentioned there about your own experience with menopause, and you've also personally used Peppy's support. How did that support shape your understanding of how many meaningful benefits can really influence someone's decision to stay in a business or to leave?
Um, Well, I think it's open. You're able to be open, and I'm able to talk to my manager about it. I have a male manager and I'm able to tell him about it. And I think because we've got Peppy and we've done other initiatives at eBay as well. We did around International Women's Day. They had another organization come in as well, and they had the guys wear a men vest, which was hilarious. So they're wearing these vests, and then which would simulate, sorry, a hot flush.
Oh
So
my God.
it was really funny. So these guys are like sitting there, and suddenly they'd be like, didn't know what to do.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was good to have that, and then also at the same time, I was able to talk about Peppy. So and my experience, and I have no problem talking about my experience in front of men or women. It doesn't bother me. It's a natural thing to go through, people. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it was just really nice once I actually started to use Peppy. Obviously, I had the one-to-one consultation, and I wasn't really sure about going on to HRT. I was a bit nervous about it, despite knowing that all of the sort of the myths of HRT have kind of been debunked, but you're still a bit nervous about it. But they were able to talk me through alternative therapies, other ideas, other things that I could do to help relieve the symptoms. I got follow up. I was able to do one-to-one chats. Obviously on the app, there's so much there. There are so many resources. You've got the webinars, you've got the events. So you're listening to, like today, you've got people talking about their experience, not just about using Peppy, but about having menopause issues. Or, I'm sorry, I'm focusing more on menopause because that's obviously what I've been going through, but it's all of the other issues that you cover as well through Peppy. I mean, it's just fantastic. And you feel like you're not alone. So it's really nice. You just feel supported.
Oh, thank you. Well, we didn't actually pay her to say that, everybody, but it's great to hear it from her firsthand. And obviously,
Checks coming in the post, Grace.
we're joined by Laura, as I mentioned, who oversees our clinical services and really is the driving force behind delivering all of those services. So, Laura, I'm going to come to you now. Obviously, you work across our user base and delivering our clinical services across all of all of those bits that we've mentioned: fertility, becoming a parent, men's health, women's health, every day. So, what are some of the most impactful changes that you've seen in someone's working life because they had access to the right support at the right time?
very similar stories to what Lorian was talking about, really, where it just feels like they were able to access and speak to someone and realize that they're not alone in those conversations. And when it comes to menopause, understanding what those symptoms are and what they're going through, and actually that it is potentially menopause and what can be done, what support can be given, and just how they're able to feel that they, can talk to someone, be open about it, know that the advice that they're getting is like clinically accurate. We know there's lots out there on TikTok and things like that, and there's work being done to make sure that that's validated. But really, the same stories, that they feel human again once they've got the support that they need. They feel focused again. They feel they can draw down and get back into work, or understand how to start to have that conversation with their manager. So they might come to us and say, "Oh, I'm going through this. I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to have my voice in this." And they go away with, tips and tricks of how to open up and start that conversation. And then they realize that actually there are probably more benefits that their workplace provides and support that their workplace provides that they weren't necessarily aware of, that they can get access to and tap into and get the support that they need. So yeah, a really similar story of coming back and feeling human again because they've got the support that they needed and not alone. And realizing, when we talk about miscarriage, it's 1 in 4. When we talk about the menopause, it's 3 in 4. These are big statistics of support that people are needing, and realizing they're not alone, and they are topics that they can talk about at work. And actually, work are prepared for this often, but they don't know about it. It's buried in their intranet somewhere. And it's like, actually, yes, go and have a conversation, and then feeling supported at the end of that.
And I think that's a big part of what we aim to do as well. If we can support someone having that conversation with their manager, and then that is kind of the opposite effect of, we've got people like Lorian trying to raise awareness, but then if we can re-raise awareness through the upwards channels by supporting our users, then that obviously has an impact on the business as well. And Laura, I know from speaking to your team and some of the clinicians that we work with, they often have stories where people say, I stayed in work because of this support. I previously thought that I was alone. Can you share any more kind of insight
Yeah,
as
we had feedback really recently of a chap that had been approached to go and work elsewhere, and he was like, "Well, I'm only going to move my job if I can get Peppy, because I can't, I need this support." Him and his wife had used our fertility service and had found it absolutely invaluable, and they're currently pregnant, which is excellent news. So,
well?
but yeah, they just said, he said, "I can't be without this. This has given me everything that I need." So, those sort of stories are fantastic to hear. And, we've been at benefits events where, we were at the Hempicked Awards, and some guy nearly took me out on the dance floor. He needed to tell me how amazing, Peppy was, and that it had saved his marriage. These are the sort of things that we hear, and we don't take that for granted. And I had a message from one of our clients yesterday to say we'd done a menopause cafe, and she said people coming up to her all the time say basically Peppy saved their life. So, just fantastic feedback that we get. And it just, that makes my heart warm inside, because that's why we do what we do. But, knowing that we're making that difference, and we're getting that feedback that difference is there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Hearing those stories makes me kind of love my job even more.
Yeah.
Lorian, since introducing kind of some of the benefits that you provide, have you had any feedback similar from your employees or anyone in your team?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people have messaged me just to say thank you so much for providing this benefit. It's really saved me, and it's so lovely to hear, and it's so nice to know that with your job, obviously the day to day can be a bit grueling sometimes, but when you get feedback like that and people are really so relieved and so happy that they've got this support, it means so much, and it feels like you're actually making a difference. Although you obviously I'm fortunate in what I do, and that everything that we provide our employees is making a difference to them, whether it's medical insurance or pension or whatever. But it's really nice to know that I was kind of instrumental in bringing Peppy in, and I've actually done something to help people. So it's a really lovely feeling. It's a really lovely feeling, and Peppy is such an important benefit. But it is kind of, you don't realize it until you need it, right? So
Exactly. I think
yeah.
thing sometimes. but we are there whenever someone does need us. And I guess the difficult thing there is we love the user feedback and we know we're impacting people's lives every day. But sometimes, again, if we're thinking about how we can present that to the business, the stakeholders sometimes want to see that ROI a little bit more. So have you seen any shifts, Lorian, that you can kind of measure with regards to engagement, retention, or employee loyalty since launching Peppy? And what proof points really matter most to the stakeholders that you need to get that buy-in from?
I don't have any hard stats on it at the moment. I've got obviously our engagement surveys from Peppy, which is great, but in terms of retention, I don't have any stats on that. But we are going to be, as I said previously, we carried out a survey a few years ago. We're going to be carrying out another one, and obviously Peppy will be. It was pre-Peppy time, so there will certainly be questions in there around that, and to find out, what benefits people value so much. And I know that Peppy will certainly be one of them for sure. But
We
yeah,
will.
and hopefully ask me this time next year and I'll be able
I
to
was
give you
just
some
going to
more
say, we'll
hard
be coming
data.
back to
Yeah,
you.
yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. And Laura, where are you seeing the clearest link between inclusive support and talent retention?
So where we see it is when people are coming to us and asking those questions, and that, again, that valuable feedback that they're saying, I'm so pleased that my employer provides Peppy, and we get that a lot. And I think that sort of shows that they see it as a really valued resource. Because of the way that Peppy works, where we have the one-to-one consultations, but we also have chat that's like WhatsApp. It's a really easily accessible service. So, for example, in pregnancy and parenthood, yes, they can have consultations, but you all know what it's like when you run around after a little one trying to actually find time to take an hour out to go and have a consultation. But to be able to WhatsApp chat with somebody to have those questions, and to be able to watch the webinars, at we record them and then they get sent out so people can watch them when they want to. So we see that retention comes from that respect. And also with our pregnancy and parenthood service, we've got an amazing return to work service. So part of that is about how to have those conversations about going back to work and the feelings of going back to work. So we're supporting someone getting back into that workplace, and they're saying, I want to go back to work. I want to be able to be at work. I'm not sure how to make this balance work. And then after the support that we give them, they're like, right, I want to be back at work and this is how I manage it. They want to be back in that place of work that provides Peppy.
And I think that's it, isn't it? When we can support someone through those transitions throughout those major events in their life, that has a direct impact on that retention, because you're often coming back from parental leave, and like you say, that return to work can be huge. But if you've got someone supporting you through that and helping you take those steps, then that obviously has an impact on that retention.
And they feel valued by being, they feel valued that their workplace provides something like Peppy, because they know that they are being invested in. And I think that's the case with any benefit, but I think it is that bit that they feel valued.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, Lorian, you mentioned, or actually it said at the beginning when we did the poll that I think it was about 18% said that one of the biggest challenges were that benefits were underused, which was quite a high percentage in the poll. And you mentioned then as well, Peppy, for a lot of people, they use it when they need it, when they've experienced menopause or becoming a parent. But how do you ensure that people really know that Peppy is there when they need it, and it stays front of mind and actually gets used?
Well, I think, you've hit the nail on the head there, and people don't use the benefits until they need to use the benefits, and then they panic and don't know where to find them. And we kind of think in the benefits team and the people team, we're like, but it's here. But obviously we're doing it every day. They're not. So and we have to be aware of that. So I've certainly seen engagement rising over the period of time that we've been with Peppy, which I think is probably about 2.5 years now. And every event that we have, it's bigger and bigger engagement, which is great. And then the registration spike following that. So we have been typically doing events around sort of International Women's Day, World Menopause Day. We've also done some events with the men's health piece as well for November. And at eBay, we have communities of inclusion. So we've got the Women at eBay network and we've got the November network. So I've really tried to build relationships with those organizations within eBay, and that's helped massively. So they've really helped promote, because I promote things out on Slack, or we'll send emails. If you send out an email, people just, they don't have the time to read it. They look at their emails and they've got, goodness knows how many. So it gets lost. But I think if they are part of one of those communities of inclusion, that really helps. So if you've got organizations like that within your company, definitely leverage that. And it's been really successful doing that. And as I say, every time it's really nice to see you kind of do an event, you're like, oh, okay, we've got more people than we had last time. And then when I have my quarterly updates with Peppy and we look at the engagement levels and we look at the registrations, there have been spikes after those events. So definitely, I really encourage you to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I think firstly I love looking at the impact of the
Mm.
events and the comms you do and the impact that has on the service being used, but also I think like you said, using different channels throughout your company, whether it's networks or key stakeholders. And Laura, they also we always kind of look at the big key awareness days, and here at Peppy, the ones that are important to us, definitely hear about. But I think, like Lorian said, using the inclusion networks, it kind of brings out different needs for different people. And I think we're hearing that a lot with our clinical services as well at the moment, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And we find that that's the best way to get engagement and things as well. So, you're pulling them into the events and things, and they're the ones that are able to share. And so, if you've got a menopause champion, absolutely fantastic. You've got someone that's in your pregnancy and parenthood, you've got people championing for men's health. They're able to get out there and integrate more with that teams. And like you say, things get lost in emails, but when you've got inclusion groups like that, it's a really great way of sharing resources and getting people aware of what's available to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's kind of look ahead then. And I think, like we mentioned, using some of those inclusion networks or groups, they are a really good insight to see kind of, what is on the agenda for some of these healthcare support. So Laura, what area of support do you think will be a major retention differentiator in the next kind of 12 to 18 months?
So key things that were sort of coming out that are things are being asked about are particularly around more awareness around fertility. It's something that's like more on the rise, and realizing that actually 50% is male factor. So it's inclusive for all for both areas of your business. The other thing is preventative health. I think is really on the rise, of realizing the importance of getting ahead of the game. So for example, in the menopause arm, we're doing about even understanding the menopause, being ready for it. So actually when it comes, you're not thinking what's happening, you know what's happening. So that's really key. In men's health, knowing your numbers, knowing what blood pressure, things like that, silent killers, waist measurements can be indicative of lots of different things. So, understanding what those things might mean. So, erectile dysfunction is a precursor often to other health issues. So it's getting into that preventative health. And so I think that's going to be the next big part to what we want to do is get people before it becomes a catastrophic event. We want to make sure that we can get in there and help support and make potentially reversible or sort of remission type changes, for example in diabetes and things like that. So I see that's where the next sort of 12-18 months is going, sort of that preventative health arm.
Yeah, that's really useful insight. Thank you. And I know the team are doing a lot of work on that already. So I'm sure there'll be more to come from you and your team on that. And then Lorian, just the kind of nearly your last question, but what's next for you at eBay, and what areas are you kind of looking at to support that you're hoping to strengthen further?
Well, I think what Laura just said as well, preventative health is certainly becoming a bigger subject, which is a good thing. So I want to start sort of looking into that um, for our employees. I don't know, obviously I think we're probably the best way to do it would be through our health insurance and through Peppy, leverage what we've already got. We're also working to onboard a company called Sword for musculoskeletal issues, actually through our Peppy contract. So things like that to help people. Financial advice, which obviously this isn't the forum to discuss that, but that's certainly one of the things that I want to look at. I mean, I think in terms of women's health, we're pretty much covered. We've got so many benefits. Some of them overlap, unfortunately. You know, we've got things like Peppy and Carrot, and Carrot for fertility, and Clio for parental support. So I think we're doing okay with that at the moment. But you know, I think always keep an eye out on trends, see what's happening, see what people are talking about more. And yeah, Laura, certainly in the last few months, I've heard preventative health coming up a lot more. And so I think that's something that we really need to focus on in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just a reminder to everyone on the call, if you do have any questions for Lorian or Laura, please pop them in the Q&A. I'm going to ask them a couple more questions each and then we'll come to you. So don't be shy. But before we head into that Q&A, I've just got a quick fire round for both of you. So I'm going to give you a sentence to complete and I just want your first instinct. So, Laura, to you first, complete this sentence, please. It's like I'm a quiz show host. One thing every employer should do today to keep their best people is. Lauren,
Uh,
I'm coming to you next, so get thinking.
yeah, give them Peppy, I would say.
Oh, love that. Love that. Anything to expand, or is that your
Yeah,
motto in life?
inclusive healthcare that, helps people at the point when they need it most, and in an accessible way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's key, isn't it? We all live such busy lives. You mentioned before, if you're a new parent, can you find an hour for a consultation? But having that accessibility is key. And Lorian, same for you. One thing every employer should do today to keep their best people is.
Well, I'm just glad that Laura didn't steal my response, actually. But yeah, listen. Just listen to your employees. You know, they're always going to provide you feedback, and then you will then know what people want, and hopefully you can do something to support them. So you know, these employee surveys that we've done previously, and I think we're going to be carrying one out within the next year as well. Just listen, and you know, we've got a pretty robust benefits toolkit at eBay, but there's always more things coming through. So I think, and again, yeah, accessibility as well to those benefits, and really trying to let people know what they've already got. So we're working on that. We're really working on communication as well. My colleague's been working very hard on the new eBay benefits site. So yeah, listen and make sure you get that content out to your employees.
Yeah, I think it's you mentioned it earlier, we work in that we know where you can find things, but you've got to kind of look in the mind of someone that isn't aware of benefits every day. So yeah, I think
Absolutely, yeah.
wow. Amazing. Thank you both so much. I've got some questions that aren't written by me now. So I'm going to come to you first, Laura. And this is a little bit of insight on the PEPI support offering. Does part of the PEPI offering support for cover non-traditional family forming, specifically for the Pride community? It is Pride Month. So yeah, it's a very apt question.
Absolutely. We very much focus on that, and it is Pride Month. So actually, we've highlighted a lot of in our fertility sector a lot about Pride. So understanding, if you might need to use donor sperm, you might need to use donor eggs, you might need to look at surrogacy options, you might consider adoption. So we cover all of those areas, and understanding some of the barriers that might come across for that, but how to get the best support and able to get the right advice for what you need.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. And another question, I think maybe between you and I, we can answer this one. And actually, Lauren, you can probably jump in as well, because I know you have Peppy not just for your UK employees, but how does Peppy deliver a truly localized experience for clients at a global level across multiple markets and regions?
So we make sure that obviously our content is based on the areas where people work, and the advice. Obviously, quite a lot of our advice is UK based, but for our global clients, we make sure that that advice is tailored to the needs of the countries that they're in. For example, if you're seeking fertility treatment somewhere like India, or things like that, we're able to make sure that that content is tailored to the area that you live in.
Amazing. And I think just to add there, we currently are live in 24 countries across the globe. So we really do ensure that the content is localized, depending on where that person is. And I think from my perspective there, kind of working with clients that do have employees in different regions, we really help to ensure that we are creating visibility that is relevant to wherever those employees are. So it may be that we run some events in the UK based on those kind of topics or interests from the networks like Lorian mentioned, and then we may look at APAC and look at what's trending there and what's relevant there, and the different communication methods that people use in different locations is really important. And Lorian, again, I know you're using Peppy in different regions, so I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I mean, really what you've just said, in that you do tailor it to each region. And although I look after the insured benefits for EMEA, I look after Peppy globally. And obviously there are some nuances with what you can and can't deliver in various countries. But yeah, I think you know, you tailor it to that region, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I know with our US business as well, very much, it's dependent from state to state and things like that. So
Yes.
we're able to work with that as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. And this is a little bit of a different question, Lorian, but I'm thinking that I didn't write this, but it links nicely to what you said before about how your benefits team mission, and you really think when you're trying to sell in benefits is what's our mission and how can we align? But then to take it one step further, how did you align those inclusive benefits like Peppy with your overall business strategy? So I guess looking at the overall strategy and how you've got that mission based on that overall strategy.
Well, as at eBay, we've got our DNA, so we try to link everything back to our DNA. And obviously, that's more because we are an e-commerce platform. It's more about the customer. So we try to, as the benefits team, try to think of our customers as our employees, basically. So it's trying to link everything back to the DNA.
I love that. Yeah, I think we're all a business for a reason, and aligning everyone to your mission and goals is going to help you get that buy-in for so many different things, not just.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
we always try to do that with all our benefits.
yeah, that's a good tip and trick for people to take away. Think of that overall business strategy and mission.
Mm.
I think I'm going to answer this one. So the question is, what advice do you have for HR professionals trying to make the business case for gender inclusive health support when budget is tight? Oh, actually, maybe maybe I won't answer that one. It's quite a tough question. Um, I think something that we mentioned at the beginning is knowing, Laura actually mentioned it from a healthcare perspective, is knowing your numbers. But I think Laura mentioned it from a data perspective. Know your numbers and know your impact to the business. If you don't support people going through menopause. Like Lorian said, 8 out of 10 women going through menopause will experience it at work. If you know the impact of someone going through fertility problems is going to have on your business, then that really helps you build a business case. What is that impact on your business? And therefore the budget you should be able to have a better time finding that budget, or it should be easier, because you can say, if we don't support this, we're going to have X amount of sick days off, we're going to lose X amount of people to go to them leaving the workplace through menopause, and finding the budget it will be a lot smaller than what that impact will have on your business. So that would be my recommendation, and we can help you with that at Peppy. Look at that business impact, because no doubt if you don't support some of these life-changing moments, then unfortunately people will leave and they will struggle and they will take time off. So yeah, definitely know those numbers where you can.
And we all know the costs of recruitment, going through that process, and and the impact that not being able to recruit has on the rest of your team and the so actually you start to balance out what that looks like in budget terms. I think it becomes an easy win.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's totally right. I was working in recruitment at eBay when I first started, and you know, you'd see the costs of recruitment, and it was, some of them were just so high. So yeah, I mean, you want to retain your staff. It's not just about losing their knowledge and expertise, as I said previously, but it's also the cost to the company. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's it. That offsets the investment sometimes, doesn't it? Well, 9 times out of 10. So yeah, I think if you can build that business case, then it will be easier for you to find that budget. Like I said, we can help with that as well. Lorien, just one more question for you, because I think we've got a couple of minutes left. But how has offering inclusive health support shaped your culture more broadly? So beyond just retention and engagement metrics, but what has it done for your people coming to work every day?
I think there's just they feel supported, they feel really supported. They can bring themselves to work, they can be authentic. And knowing that they've got that support with all of our various problem, they can tell people about it because they feel safe. It's a safe space. I mean, the one thing that I would like to work on more in the next year or so is management training, just so that we can provide that additional support. But I think, generally at eBay, people want to bring their real selves to work.
Yeah, which is lovely that you create an environment where people can do that. And I think
All I
that,
can say is watch this space.
yeah, I was going to say, Laura, the manager training, that sounds like something that we've been discussing.
Oh
Um,
no, I've already been discussing it with Pepper. Don't worry, I'm all over it. Yeah, we are. We're gonna start doing that.
Amazing. Yeah, I think we've mentioned before how users can contact our clinicians and say, how can I have this conversation with my manager? But actually, if we think about the reverse way, how can managers help create that inclusive environment? And we spoke about getting men involved in the menopause conversation.
Yeah.
As a man, they often feel like, I think, what's the stat, Laura? 61% of men don't feel comfortable having that conversation. I might get
Yeah.
that wrong, but I think it's about that. So if that's 61% of men in the workforce that don't feel like they can support their female colleagues going through menopause. So we want to help them as well to really help create that inclusive culture.
And some support for those managers as well when you're having conversations around baby loss and people going through difficult time. That's a lot to take on as a manager. So it's making sure
Mm.
that that wraparound care is for that manager as well, so that they know
Yeah.
how to be able to deal with some of the conversations that they're having, because it might not be something that they're used to talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a good place to conclude then with our watch this space. The comment from you, Laura. I think from kind of covering that manager training piece, but also from us looking at the trends ahead, the next 12 to 18 months, I think we will see that shift to preventative healthcare a lot more. But yeah, I think the kind of key takeaway that I've got from today is, have conversations, give people the tools or the comfort to speak out, to be able to share what's impacting them. And I think that will really help you here on the call shape your strategy and see what's really important to your employees. So thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have enjoyed today's session, which I hope you have, and you'd like to explore Peppy in more detail, again, I mentioned things like manager training that's upcoming, and also ways that we can help kind of you show the impact that not supporting gender inclusive healthcare benefits will have on your business, then please do reach out to us, or you can explore Peppy in more detail by scanning the QR code on your screen right now. And this will give you access to our on-demand demo, and you can see our clinical support in action whenever it suits you. Before I wrap up, I just want to say a huge thank you to Lorien and Laura for their honesty, clarity, and practical insight today. I also want to say thank you, Lorien, for sharing your own personal experience. I think that really just brings to life the support that we provide. What we've heard is that inclusive healthcare isn't a one-off. It isn't just the webinars or awareness days. It's really about embedding support that people actually value, because it really does show that you are showing up when your people need it most. At eBay, that meant that leadership buy-in, listening to real employee needs, and choosing benefits that really make a difference. And as we've said, the results speak for themselves, the retention, engagement, and really creating that culture where people can bring their best selves to work and feel like themselves every day. So thank you all for joining us. As I said at the beginning of the call, keep an eye on your inbox for the session recording and our next steps as well. And if today has sparked some ideas, we'd absolutely love to hear from you and continue the conversation. And take care, everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, Grace.
Thanks both.
you.